Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has lashed out at the West. If the United States and the United Kingdom green signal the use of long-range missiles for strikes inside the Russian territory, then that would be tantamount to a direct war between the NATO military alliance and Russia. The American President Joe Biden just met with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and both leaders, although circumspect, have indicated that they are willing to allow Ukraine to use long-range missiles. For its part, even Russia is getting some help from its allies. Russia has been regularly using ballistic missiles sent by North Korea to strike targets across Ukraine. Iran's Shahed 136 drones have effectively punctured the Ukrainian air defense systems by swarming over and devastating Ukraine's energy facilities. But a new headache, which Ukraine and the West will find really hard to counter, are Russia's latest version of the long-range kamikaze drones that are fitted with a Chinese engine called the Garpiya-A1. These new long-range drones are similar to the Iranian Shahed 136 drones in their design. But what impact will they have on the battlefield? Our next report gets you the details. Russia is hitting back hard in the Kirks region. After more than a month of the Ukrainian incursion into Kirks, where the Ukrainian forces had captured nearly about 1,500 square kilometers of the Russian territory, Moscow appears to have found the elbow room to push out the Ukrainian soldiers from Kirks. According to Russian claims, so far at least about 10 settlements in Kirks have been wrested away from the Ukrainian hands. Russian drones have continued with their onslaught on Ukraine's power infrastructure. On the 12th of September, Russia fired nearly about 64 drones at the Ukrainian town of Konotop's energy infrastructure in the Sumy region. Kiev managed to shoot down about 44 of the Russian drones, but the other drones managed to get through. Iranian-manufactured Shahed 136 drones have been particularly potent due to their cheap cost and large numbers in evading the Western air defense systems. Ukraine has now claimed that Russia has fired a total of over 8,000 Shahed drones since the beginning of this war that have had a devastating effect on its power infrastructure. The United States claims on the basis of its intelligence that Iran has sent over 400 short-range missiles to Russia, including the likes of Fateh 110 and Zolfaghar with a range of 300 to 700 kilometers.
The United States has confirmed reports that Iran has transferred shipments of Fateh 360 close-range ballistic missiles to Russia, which we assess could employ them within weeks against Ukraine, leading to the deaths of even more Ukrainian civilians. To echo our State Department and White House colleagues, this is a deeply concerning development, as this partnership between Iran and Russia threatens European security and illustrates how Iran's destabilizing influence reaches beyond the Middle East and around the world.
For many months, Ukraine had been asking for a green signal to fire the long-range missiles into the Russian territory, a strategy to take the impact of war inside Russia. And this week, Keir Starmer met with Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. But both leaders stopped short of giving Ukraine the permission to fire long-range missiles into Russia.
The United States is committed to standing with you to help Ukraine as it defends against Russia's onslaught and aggression. Clear that Putin will not make it clear Putin will not prevail in this war, and the people of Ukraine will prevail.
Vladimir Putin has been categorical. If Ukraine is allowed to fire the ATACMS or the Storm Shadow long-range missiles into Russia, he said, this will change the very essence of the war.
It is not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. It is about making a decision about whether NATO countries are directly involved in the military conflict or not. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, and European countries in the war in Ukraine. This is their direct participation, and this, of course, significantly changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. This will mean that NATO countries, the United States, and European countries are fighting Russia. And if this is so, then bearing in mind the change in the very essence of this conflict, we will make appropriate decisions based on the threats that will be created for us.
Ukraine will have to rely on Western satellite systems to fire the long-range missiles into Russia. And if this were to happen, according to Vladimir Putin, it would mean that the NATO military alliance would be in a direct war with Russia. So while the Western nations are still calculating the cost of the escalation with long-range missiles, a new type of kamikaze drone has been fielded by Russia in the Ukrainian war theatre. Similar in design to the Shahed drone, the new long-range attack drone called the Garpiya-A1 is reportedly fitted with a Chinese engine. Manufactured by the IMZ Kupol, a subsidiary of the Russian state-owned weapons manufacturer Almaz-Ante, Russia has so far produced almost 2,500 Garpiya-A1s. Garpiya-A1 reportedly has a range of over 1,500 kilometers with a takeoff weight of 300 kilograms. So while Ukraine waits for clearance from its allies to introduce new weapon systems into the war theatre, Russia has unveiled its latest weapon to press home its advantage. At least 11 people have been killed and scores of others wounded in a fresh wave of violence that is sweeping across India's northeastern state of Manipur. On Tuesday, the authorities imposed an indefinite curfew and suspended internet and mobile data services until Sunday in a bid to avoid spreading misinformation. The deadly ethnic conflict that erupted last year in the month of May, where a court decision suggested that the majority Meiteis community should also receive the economic benefits and quotas previously reserved for the Kukis. Now, close to about 250 people have been killed since then, and tens of thousands have been internally displaced. Such has been the resurgence of violence in the last 10 days that students and locals have been taking to the streets daily, demanding for peace in the conflict-torn state. So what really is happening in Manipur at the moment? Our next report gets you the details.
Manipur, a border state of 3.2 million people, has been anxiously waiting for peace since May of last year. Ever since ethnic clashes erupted between the majority Meiteis and the indigenous minority Kuki groups, neighborhoods have been split up and decades-long bonds between communities have been torn apart. Manipur today has been bifurcated into two opposing camps, with mostly Hindu Meiteis inhabiting the Imphal Valley and Christian Kukis dominant in the surrounding hill areas. The two enclaves are separated by a stretch of no man's land monitored by federal paramilitary forces. 59,000 people continue to languish in government relief camps. Fearing for their safety, many locals have been forced to take up arms. Some stolen from armed forces, some country-made, to protect their villages from intruders. Recently, Kukis organized protests against State Chief Minister N. Biren Singh. After an audio clip went viral, in which Singh was allegedly heard making provocative remarks about the community. Fresh violence erupted on the 1st of September when suspected militants from the Kuki community launched a drone attack on Meiteis-dominant areas, causing widespread damage. As violence escalated, 6 deaths, including one of a civilian, was reported on the 7th of September. The deadliest day in the latest spurt of violence. On Monday, hundreds of Meiteis students took to the streets to protest against the drone attacks. Police used tear gas and stun grenades to disperse the crowds. About 45 protesters suffered minor injuries in the ensuing mayhem. The next day, as the protesters appealed for peace in the conflict-torn state, tear gas shells were again fired upon them. Manipur Inspector General of Police appealed to protesting students not to indulge in violence and urged them to stage demonstrations peacefully.
We appeal to them not to indulge in violence, because all that kind of things create unnecessary kind of problems, which cause injuries even to our police personnel as well as to the students and other civilians, and it is very counterproductive. So we appeal to the students to do it in a peaceful manner.
On Tuesday, escalation of violence led to imposition of indefinite curfew and suspension of internet services for 5 days. Hundreds of students took to the streets on Wednesday demanding an end to the violence in the region.
Should we choose war or should we study? Which side should we choose? Governor, respected Chief Minister, respected President, please provide the means to stop violence in our small state of Manipur.
स्टॉप करने के लिए थोड़ा प्लीज मींस तो दे दीजिए और प्लीज स्टॉप करिए.
The peace efforts continued on Thursday when, defying curfew restrictions, students and locals marched to the Deputy Commissioner's office in the Bishnupur district and submitted a memorandum demanding a de-escalation of violence and withdrawal of federal forces from Manipur. Despite a heavy army presence and a visit by the Home Minister last year when he met with both communities, the deadly clashes have persisted. Federal and state officials have made some attempts to end the conflict by holding peace talks between the communities. But locals say it's a case of too little, too late. Both communities continue to blame the other for stoking violence. Establishment of trust between the warring Kukis and Meiteis is crucial, without which the situation in Manipur will continue to be tense and it would be difficult to move forward.
At least 81 people were killed after suspected fighters from the Boko Haram hardline terror group attacked the village in northeastern Nigeria on the 1st of September. Armed with rifles and rocket-propelled grenades, nearly about 150 suspected Boko Haram terrorists on more than 50 motorcycles attacked the village at about 4 p.m. local time on Sunday. Shops and homes were set ablaze by the terrorists in the latest attack. With several others still reportedly missing, the number of people who have been killed has still not been ascertained. Our next report gets you the details.
The state of Yobe in northeastern Nigeria is one of the 3 states on the front line of a 15-year insurgency waged by the Boko Haram and other hardline groups. The insurgency has left more than 40,000 people killed and over 2 million internally displaced. The latest episode on Sunday afternoon targeted the Mafa ward in the northeastern Yobe state. Reportedly, it was a revenge attack in retaliation for the killing of the 2 Boko Haram terrorists by vigilantes from the village. Escapees of the attack narrated the horror of the indiscriminate shooting, arson, and loot.
They burnt our houses, killed our people and killed our men. They set off bombs and that resulted in the killing of a large number of people, including husbands. We lost parents and husbands and properties.
Residents feared that the toll could be even higher, considering villagers fleeing from the terrorists were still missing and feared dead. An Islamic sectarian movement founded in 2002 by Muhammad Yusuf in northeastern Nigeria, Boko Haram has been involved in large-scale violence and assassinations in the country since 2009. The government claims that the militant group's capacity to launch attacks has been significantly diminished recently, which has resulted in smaller villages becoming soft targets.
No, the military have devastated them seriously. They have the capacity to attack major towns, so they are now bent on small targets, sub-targets where the people have been not able to defend themselves.
The most populous African nation is wrestling with the challenge of a multiple-front war. A 15-year-long Islamist insurgency in its northeast, separatist violence in the southeast, and frequent deadly clashes between farmers and herders in the central region. Sunday's attack is yet another reminder of the dark days of Nigeria's long-running struggle with Islamist militants. Is the Nigerian government prepared to deal with this challenge? Only time will tell.
For the first time ever, Pyongyang has offered a glimpse into its nuclear program on the 13th of September. North Korean state media, in a report accompanied with still photographs, has said that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a uranium enrichment facility and has called for more centrifuges to produce more weapons-grade material for nuclear bombs. The Kim Jong-un had earlier vowed on state's founding anniversary on the 9th of September to increase the number of nuclear weapons exponentially at the disposal of Pyongyang. The rare glimpse into a North Korean uranium enrichment facility has now evoked some strong condemnation from the South Korean government. So why is the Kim Jong-un government flaunting its nuclear development program at this stage? Our next report gets you the details.
North Korea's nuclear program is banned under multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions. But that hasn't deterred the East Asian country from pursuing the path of being recognized as a nuclear state. In an unprecedented move on Friday, North Korean state media released these still photographs, which showed the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un walking past long rows of metal centrifuges and talking to military officials while visiting a uranium enrichment facility. Metal centrifuges are the machines that enrich uranium, which is essential in the manufacture of nuclear warheads. The photographs also showed Kim overseeing the test launch of a new 600 mm multiple launch rocket system and inspecting the training base of the Special Operation Armed Force of North Korea's army to guide a combatant's drill. Reportedly, the North Korean leader felt strong to see the site and said the weapons are needed for self-defense and the capability for a preemptive attack, and that anti-DPRK nuclear threats from the US imperialist-led vassal forces have crossed the red line. Though Pyongyang didn't reveal the date of the inspection nor the nuclear facility visited by Kim, analysts have an opinion or two about the suspected location.
In my opinion, Kangson or Yongbyon were those centrifuges who were suspected to be additionally installed since 2021 can be the location because Kim Jong-un's activities have been monitored by the US and South Korean intelligence. Kim can't afford to reveal other secret bases.
On the same day, Seoul's Unification Ministry condemned North Korea's publicizing of its nuclear enrichment facility, adding that the illegal development of nuclear weapons is a clear violation of several resolutions set by the United Nations Security Council.
The government strongly condemns North Korea for unveiling its uranium enrichment facilities and discussing the accelerated enhancement of its nuclear capabilities and the production of nuclear materials for tactical nuclear weapons. North Korea's illegal development of nuclear weapons is a clear violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions and poses a serious threat to peace on the Korean Peninsula and the world. Under no circumstances will we or the international community ever accept North Korea's possession of nuclear weapons, and North Korea must clearly recognize this.
But why did Pyongyang choose to boast of its nuclear development now? Is it a message to Washington, D.C., keeping in mind the upcoming US presidential election, that it would be impossible to denuclearize North Korea?
North Korea is constantly sending a message that it is an irreversible nuclear state. So if there is a negotiation with the United States, it would make a deal inside the framework as a nuclear state.
Though it is not confirmed how many nuclear weapons North Korea has, a recent estimate pegs the number at 50, with sufficient material to produce another 40. This rare unveiling of nuclear buildup by Pyongyang amid heightened tensions on the Korean Peninsula is no doubt a boast, signaling that its nuclear program is irreversible.
In the occupied Palestinian lands, it is not just the Gaza Strip that is bearing the brunt of the Israeli onslaught. Increasingly, the West Bank that is governed by Fatah, the Palestinian political rival of Hamas, has witnessed repeated and deadly raids by the Israeli forces. West Bank cities such as Tubas, Tulkarm and Jenin have suffered extensive damage. In the Gaza Strip, the United Nations has condemned the killing of at least about 6 United Nations workers in an Israeli airstrike on the Al-Jawni school in the Nusayrat refugee camp. It has demanded accountability for the egregious violations of the international humanitarian law by the Israeli war machine. After more than 11 months of relentless bombardment of the Gaza Strip, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has now claimed that Israel is close to finishing its mission in the Gaza Strip, and now the Israeli focus will turn to the northern border with Lebanon. Our next report gets you the details.
This is the scale of the crater left behind after the deadly Israeli bombing of the densely populated Al-Mawasi refugee camp, an area designated by the Israeli military as a safe zone for the Palestinians. Provisionally, the death toll has been given as 40 on the basis of the number of bodies that have been pulled out. But the rescue workers say that there are more bodies inside and they don't have the digging equipment that is needed to bring out the other bodies that are still buried. A total of 5 missiles were fired by Israel in the tightly packed encampment in the dead of the night.
We were in the tent when it was between 1 and 2. A warplane came and fired the first missile, leaving a huge explosion. The tent started shaking and debris was flying everywhere. We stayed where we were for about 15 to 30 minutes before the rescue team arrived. My wife and I hunched over to keep the tent from collapsing until after 5 or 6 more missiles were fired and rescue workers arrived. We were evacuated from the tent, only to find our neighbors all dead with their arms and heads blown off.
In Gaza City's Jabalia refugee camp, another Israeli strike, again in the dead of the night, killed 9 more Palestinians. The house that was targeted belonged to Akram al-Najjar, a professor at the Al-Quds Open University and a former headmaster. At least 40 people are reported to have been inside of the house when Israel struck it with its missile.
They are civilians. He used to be a headmaster, a university professor. He's not related to any faction. They are civilians. They have a stone next to their home. They became martyrs today. There are missing people, children, women.
In the occupied Palestinian territories of the West Bank, the Israeli forces have carried out repeated raids in cities such as Tubas, Tulkarm and Jenin. The Israeli army claims that it is going after Hamas, the Islamic Jihad and Fatah. But the Palestinians say that Israel is using bulldozers and other heavy machinery to destroy the civic infrastructure of the Palestinian people.
I want to bring a tent, my mattress, and cover and put them on the sand. I will not leave my camp. I will not leave my country. What happened to my parents and ancestors, I will not accept. They were displaced. I will not get displaced. I will sleep on the street, on the bricks and the dirt of my house, but I will not leave it. I will not leave it.
The Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who's had a bitter and a public fallout with Netanyahu, has said that Israel is close to completing its mission in the Gaza Strip, and the focus will next shift to the north.
The center of gravity is moving northward. We are near to completing our tasks in the south, but our mission here is not yet done. And this mission is to change the security situation and return the residents to their homes. These instructions that you are waiting for here today, I gave in the south and I saw the forces in action. After 3 weeks, get going. Get going, carry out their mission. It will come here as well, and you should be prepared and ready to carry out this mission.
More than 41,000 Palestinians have been killed in the last 11 months of the war. And what no one knows is when there will be a ceasefire.
And with that's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.